one marble back. There we go. I've got 10 marbles. Now, that's all the money there is. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to tell you. You owe me some interest as well. Give me it. Oh, there is no interest because it never existed. But because you've got to pay me back because it said in that agreement, and do bear in mind, it is an agreement. And if you do go into this, challenging this stuff, you will find they will send you a letter sometimes saying, here's the copy of the contract. As you will see, you signed the agreement on this date and this is fully binding. Did you all hear what trick I played on you then? Did anyone not see the trick I played? Well, I think some may not have done. But what I did, as I said, here's the copy of the contract. Well, if it's a contract, where did you tell me that that agreement, when I signed it, created the money? Oh, you didn't. So it's not a valid contract in the first place. And it was an agreement. But because I've told you it was a contract, it sits in your head then. You think, oh, they've sent me what I asked for. No. They will never send you what you asked for because it doesn't exist. They will never use a contract because they would have to say, well, what we're doing, we're actually scamming you. You're going to sign this. We're going to create the money out of thin air. We're going to put it into your bank account by pressing this button, and then you're going to pay me back. Plus interest. Let's not forget the interest. As I pointed out, the interest doesn't exist, didn't exist. So this is why people go bankrupt. Because there is no interest to pay back. And this national debt lie that we owe whatever a stupid amount it is total fabrication. You notice everyone, well, pretty much around the world, is in debt. Who did they owe the money to? Who? Some say other countries. But wait a minute, they're in debt as well. So if everyone's in debt and we owe it to each other, where's the debt? The debt doesn't exist. The debt is a made-up scam. The whole financial system is a fake, made-up scam. However, like I said, I do digress and I do drift off onto these rants or whatever you want to call them. So we've sent letter 1 off asking them to prove we owe you something. And like I've said, in the 6 years I've been doing this on GrEF, we've never had anyone be provided with the evidence we've asked them for. 6 years, not one bank, not one credit card company, not one loan company, not one financial institution can prove you owe anything. Why is that? There you go. Some of you know, because you don't owe it. You create the money. The only assets on this planet, apart from gold, drugs, oil, petrol, stuff like that, which has to be got by us. What gave any banker, and we'll say stick with bankers because they pretty much are the roots of all evil, what gave anyone that can create money out of thin air the right to go and buy some area of land and say, I own this land, I want you to work and get that oil out there, and we're going to sell it to these muppets because they don't realise we're all equal and we all have an even share in that. Yeah, we let them. We've been letting them for a long time, but now we are starting to realise that things aren't as we imagined. In fact, about 15 years ago when my head exploded and I realised things weren't quite how I'd perceived them, it was like I'd been looking at the world through rose-tinted goggles and everything was fine and dandy and everyone was loving it and nobody'd stab anybody in the back. Then I found out about banks and how they work. Turned out to be the exact opposite way to the way I'd imagined it. Unfortunately, because the banks create money out of nothing, pretend to lend it to you, they also create money out of nothing and give it to the police. They give it to the judges. They give it to the courts. They give it to the MPs with a little proviso that they do as they're told. Exactly. So, I'm glad. Now I'm going to deviate again here, as I do quite often. Gaddafi. Gaddafi was portrayed as an evil tyrant that his people hated him because he was so bad to them. When they got married, he'd give them $60,000 as a wedding present. When they became old enough to drive a car, he'd give them $30,000 to buy a car. This is the sort of tyrant Gaddafi was. Gaddafi made a promise to the people of his country, and I'll use people because anyone that doesn't understand what we're talking about, it would just confuse them if I said men, women, blah, blah. So we'll use their terms. So Gaddafi looked after his people. If you've seen pictures before the banks invaded Libya and after, you'll see it's a war zone now. The first thing the freedom fighters did when they got into Libya was set up a central bank. So, wait a minute. We're fighting for freedom, but we're more concerned about setting up a central bank. Could that by any chance have anything to do with the fact that Gaddafi was going to start introducing his own gold-backed dinar currency out of the IMF? Oh, wait, is there any other country that's done that? Oh, Iceland didn't like the banks when we found out that they were just all criminals. Oh, wait, yeah, there's Iraq as well. They weren't playing ball. Oh, strange how them countries got invaded. Oh, wait a minute. We've just had Tunisia where some probably drugged up or on proper medical drugs went and killed a load of people. So you know what we've got to do now then? Because that guy killed some people in Tunisia, we need to invade Syria. What? Are you buying that? Something happens in Tunisia, so we've got to invade Syria. Oh, wait a minute. We tried to invade Syria, but they voted against it a couple of years ago. No, we'll just do something else and try it again because them lot out there are that thick, they'll never pick up on it. That's what they think. They think you're all too stupid. You haven't been to the Eatons that they've been to. They were taught how the real world works to some degree at their private, well, whatever you want to call them, schools. We've been taken for a ride for a very, very long time. And the sad thing is, and you can't blame them, your parents did it to you. Your teachers did it to you. From that high, you were indoctrinated into the system of slavery. And see some of Rob's videos on slavery. He's nailed it on that. And again, I digress. I'll get back onto subject, I promise. So I was talking about the 3 letters. You send the first letter off. Now, on that, I emphasize this, it's a template. It means that it's for you to alter, change. More importantly, it's for you to check to make sure you understand it. Because if you don't, and you're just sending letters off, someone's going to send a letter back to you, and you're going to go, oh, they sent this back to me. What do I do? Well, do you know what you've done? Do you understand what you've asked for? Yeah. Did they send you what you asked for? No. Then the letter is just there to confuse you, to trick you into believing you owe some money. So we send it off, and I say on the letters it says 10 days apart. You can lower that to 3 days if you want. Depends on the circumstances. Sometimes you need to get a tacit agreement quicker than others. So we'll say we're at 10 days apart, the standard, because that's a reasonable time. But say for some reason you've got to, there's someone's threatening to take you to court, which very rarely actually happens. Not the threat. The threat happens often. It's the actual following through that very rarely happens. So they threaten to take you to court. So they're going to take you to court in 10 days. So what you do, under contract law, lower the time that you give them to respond. So rather than 10 days, knock it down to 3 days, 72 hours, which is the lowest you can drop to under contract law. It gives them time to get it and reply, and if not. So if we're sending 3 letters, now this is going to be a question, and I'm going to want an answer. If we're sending 3 letters, 3 days apart, how long does it take to get them in a tacit agreement? Only one? Anyone? I know you know. I was waiting for these to go 9, like they do with the 10-letter things. Everybody thinks it takes 30 days to get them in a tacit agreement, sending letters 10 days apart. It doesn't. It takes 20 days. You send it day 1, 10 days later, letter 2, 10 days later, which is 20 days, letter 3. So if we're using 3 days, you send letter 1, 3 days later, letter 2, 3 days later, letter 3, 6 days. That's how quickly it can be done. And that's only if you, 10 days is fine. As long as you're not buried your head in the sand, which I know we've all done it, because it's a very scary financial system. And they're going to use all these threats. They're going to come round and smash your door in and steal all your goods. Hardly ever happens. I did say hardly, because there are certain times when maybe it is needed. For instance, well, I won't go in for instance because it's just irrelevant, but you get the point. 10 days apart or 3 days apart. And we ask for as I said, the first letter 1, we're asking for, show me that I owe you some money and I will pay it. And newbies that come on, they go, but it says in letter 1, if they prove I owe the money, I'll pay it. I can't afford that. In the 6 years I've been on Good F, no one has ever had the evidence that we've asked for. So in 6 years, no one's had the evidence. You're going to be very, very unlucky if they can ever provide it with you. But they do lie. This is the most important thing that you need to get in your heads. Every financial institution lies. Every banking institution lies. The police lie. They do not have to tell you the truth. So when a copper arrests you and says whatever, he can lie his teeth out. There's nothing against him lying. Same with all these institutions. They can lie. We're going to send someone round to visit you. First thing, if you ever get a letter like that, A, send them a denial of access with your next letter. B, look. What you do, if you're dealing with them, you go in the forum, you scroll down to the debt collector section, you're looking for the individual companies, and you'll see Lau. You read the posts in that section, because that's who you're dealing with. You'll see exactly what they're going to send to you. If you do this, and this is just planning yourself in advance, you're planning so that when something comes to you, you can either go, oh, or you can go, oh yeah, I saw one of them posts, they had exactly the same letter. They used template letters. And they worked till we realised they were all lies. And of course, we don't know anything in the first place. I better finish this thing with the 3 letters, otherwise I'll be here all day. So we've sent letter 1, whether they reply or not, doesn't matter. If they reply, it will not be what you've asked for. It will be, well, here's a copy of the contract. As you can see, you signed the agreement quite there, and that makes you liable to buy. Here's some statements that proves it. Statements? I'll make a statement. He's eating a chocolate bar. Oh, no, he's not. It's a biscuit. But I made a statement, and it wasn't true. That's what statements are. They can be anything you want. So whatever they send back to you doesn't matter. It will not be what you've asked for. 10 days later, you send letter 2. And in that, it says, I sent you a letter 10 days ago saying, prove I owe you some money. Show me the money that I apparently owe you. Prove it to me. If you don't, I'm going to charge you for it. Charge you for me having to do your work for you. If they send you a letter, great. Look through the Laos section. You'll see that letter thousands of times. I will admit they are getting a little bit cleverer now. They're changing the letters slightly, but they can only change so much. So if they send you a letter after letter 2, no problem. Wait your 10 days. Your reply will be the 3rd letter. They don't send you anything. Great. They're agreeing to it. 10 days later, after you sent letter 2, send the third letter. Now, we are trying to educate you all, but you have to do the work yourself. There are things in the letters, and just as they are, it's fine. However, there are things that aren't in the letters. For instance, letter 3, you should all add, and I've said this many times, you should all add at the end, notice of intention of estoppel. And what that means is normally, when we first started doing the estoppel, it was 30 days after they sent you a letter, their last contact with you, you'd send an estoppel by acquiescence, which means they haven't responded in 30 days, so therefore you're using a legal document to stop them acting further. Now, many think that this legal estoppel by acquiescence isn't very powerful. Well, we saw Tom earlier. Did you know that the solicitors had to go to court to get the estoppel that he'd sent removed before they could continue? And they had to have a reason to remove it. They made up one, and of course the judge bought and paid for, so by the by. But the estoppel is a very powerful document. 30 days after letter 3, send off your estoppel, unless they contact you, in which case the clock starts again, unless you put notice of intention to estoppel on the end of letter 3, in which case whether they contact you or not, 30 days later you estoppel them. Job done. Right. Has everyone got that? Any questions? There's no point me doing this. Nobody has any questions anymore. I must be doing a good job, I guess. Right. Denial of access, which, although many groups might like to take credit for it, was actually designed by us on Good F. After we read certain books and realised that it was a very powerful document. All bailiffs, now pay attention to this, all bailiffs will lie to you and say it does not apply to them. I think it was 1936 where a bloke was working on a lorry, and the lorry was sort of blocking the path, and two cops went by, and there was no one around at the time. They walked off up the road, and they came back, and the lorry had been taken into the garage. So the cops walked in, one in plain clothes, one in uniform, and said, who caused that obstruction then? To which the garage owner, rather probably a little bit too aggressively, said, "Get off my property." The cops didn't move. The plainclothes cop went to get his warrant card. At this point, the garage owner dived at the cops, chucked them out. They overpowered him, arrested him, took him to court. And after they checked out everything that had gone off, turned out the cops were actually acting legally, because as soon as they were told to get off his property, they needed to make an expedient exit as fast as possible. Failing to do that means they were trespassing. Now, they have somewhat shot it to pieces, or certain judges have, tried to destroy it, but it still works. TV license. I don't deal with them in any way, shape or form anymore, but years ago, I sent them a denial of access, and I got a letter back saying, no one's going to come, no one's going to send anyone round, no one's going to do that, we're not going to send any more letters, but we're going to use our secret detector vans to find out if you're watching telly. I thought, well, that's great, because I don't watch telly anyway, but, you know, knock yourselves out. And recently, there's been some videos come out, or pictures of these detector vans, and it turns out there's nothing inside them. Ooh, BBC lying to the public. Who'd have thought that, eh? Who'd have thought that? However, they do. Right. Now, like I say, I'm trying to keep this short, and Mark Gillard has a question.
I accept that TV license are the only big corporation that willingly accepts this.
No, debt collectors accept it as well.
Okay. When the TV that it actually does or can encourage them and give them.
Yes, yeah. Like I said years ago, when I first got into this, I did use the denial rights. I haven't used it since. I simply don't see any reason to need to even talk to them. Yeah, if the letters, in fact, we haven't got any letters yet, but if they ever do start turning up again, I'll either send them back or, well, I'll probably send them back because it costs them to get them back.
TV license, the only problem it's got is yes, they do pass it through to another department and say, yes, we accept that you've removed our implied rights of access. What people have got to be careful of is that it does actually give them a reason to then go to the magistrate and say, he's not allowing us entry, and this is why, because he's removed our implied rights of access.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll come to Russ in a minute. Rob's got something first. You're third.
Law of necessity overrides everything. Yeah, another saying all the time, right? You are, if you're aware of this, if you are the occupier or the owner of the property, you have legal liability for anyone on your property. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Are you also aware that a domestic property doesn't come under health and safety executive? So nobody can run the skeptic, yeah? As a result of that, that house is a death trap. There's wild animals, there's dogs, there's moving vehicles.
The missus.
You have an obligation and an overriding duty necessity to protect not only the people visiting your property, to protect people in your property from untrained people visiting it. Right? This is anyone in the room does construction. What would you do if somebody walks in your property on your site? What would you do if somebody walks on your site? If you've been inducted, trust me, guys. The sign up saying, this doesn't say I'm protecting you.
My dad has been dead 18 years.
I can just finish again.
Yes, your license.
Why don't you take over that? So you are now doing the right thing because you're protecting them by physically using reasonable force to move their property. End of.
And I'm correct here that the police won't even step past that point.
Living drivers, you have your charge of property, and your occupier and owner. You can protect your liability. You've got the right to do it to the necessity. It's dangerous. You're protecting them from the dangers. You're vulnerable people in your property. You're protecting vulnerable people as well.
Okay. We're all going to come to you because Russ has decided that his bladder's a bit weak.
The other one is you have the implied rights, and you have the health and safety. The other one is the castle law doctrine, which basically every English man's home, this is castle. And that may be something extra to use. Your side, this is basically seriously, please, this is based authority.
No, the only reason I actually pointed to what I said let you speak is that case law doctrine said I actually brought it up in court at the end of April. I've got three first-hand witnesses that'll prove it. Now I asked every one of the 5 bailiffs that was given evidence against me about the rights of implied rights of access. Do you know what I mean? In the end, after asking 3 of them, the judge actually interrupted me, which was very rude, which I put him in his place for. He actually said, what do you think is the lawful excuse of me implied rights of access? So I got into a huge row with him because that's all I did for 3 days, to be perfectly honest with you. Bearing in mind, I never got threatened once with contempt of court. I actually, because I still believe in it, I do honestly believe that we can claim anything. And I do believe that you've got to go through the right paperwork. And I actually turned around to him and he went, where do you think this comes from? And I pulled out my claim of right, which is about, how many pages? 20? I used to do, I used to write big pages. I write them that big. He actually, in court, phoned on the record, could I ask him to repeat it? I actually said, he went, I am going to actually have to agree to disagree with you on that. So he wouldn't give me an answer, right? So no, I brought up the castle doctrine. He actually, on the very first day in court, he went, I'm not going to listen to that because that's not first-hand evidence in the court, mate. You can't use it. We've all got to, in a court of law, you can only use first-hand evidence.
Okay.
It didn't work out. I'm not being funny.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry for interrupting.
You haven't interrupted, so you wrote it on the data issue there. First and foremost, there is no law. It is a company's policy. Simple as a judge's policy.
I agree.
So the Castle Board doctrine, yes, you went into their court first of all. You agreed to their terms.
I went into my court. Shall I tell you I went to my court? First thing
So actually, I think I'll finish my talk before you two have a discussion. Right, now, the get out of debt free. That's not the only way to do things. We've got others that have tried things. I recently tried something that Rob pointed me in the way of. That was to do with Lowell as well. They sent me a letter claiming that I owed £3,500 on an Asda credit card, which Danny tried to point out was CSA, but it was actually an Asda credit card. Then I sent a letter saying, are you trying to brand me a slave with this number you've assigned to me? Well, you'll see it, go in the success section, you'll see my post salon, you'll see where I sent that off to them. And it was to Andrew Bartle, who's the one of their CEO type guys. And what happened then? 2 weeks went by, nothing. I thought, what's going on here then? Anyway, another letter finally arrived. This is from a different bloke. And so I simply took the letter I'd already wrote, changed it around a little bit, put Andrew Bartle again on it, and this is the new bloke's name, if it was ever a bloke, and sent them a letter saying, you've been warned that you're trying to brand me as a slave. You carry on with this, you will not have a defence to say that you're not branding me as a slave, because it's quite clear you are. I then got one more letter, which was, we're holding your thing on blah, 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 blah. And then about a week later, I got a letter saying this account has been closed and it is gone, completely gone. £3,500. And that was, again, Rob was talking about it, and I'm one of those that someone talks about it, I'll try it. And I tried it, and it works. And it's on the success section, so have a read. You can see what I wrote based on Rob's teachings and their replies. £3,500 gone like that. Now, you've got to ask yourself, why would they write off £3,500 like that? Because they know they are branding us all as slaves every time they send us a letter, and you accept that that number they've given you is your slave number. They've been enslaving us forever, and they're enslaving us daily. Because Rob talked about it, I thought I'd try it, and absolutely it worked. It's brilliant. Don't try it until you've at least tried the 3 letters first, though, because you might get some replies that you're not accustomed to, and I must actually have a chat with Rob to see where I can report them for trying to brand me as a slave as well. But that's another story. Right, I'll try and keep it short, but go on. Yeah, well. Right. Who believes that AIDS are incurable? What do you mean, no hands going up? You all believe that AIDS can be cured? Well, that's strange, because all the governments of the planet are telling us there's no cure for AIDS. Strange. Well, hey, someone's been listening. Right, before I get too much into that, have you seen these before? They're not. They're pinhole glasses. About 10 quid from JD Harris, or about 3 quid off eBay. Oh, these were tenner. You can tell they're better quality, but bye. Anyone wants to try them, you're welcome to, when I finish, to have a look. And you'll notice, if you need glasses to read, get a piece of paper out that you can't read without your glasses. Try these and you'll probably be able to read them. With usage of these, your eyesight will actually improve. Unfortunately, for those that are wearing glasses, your eyesight's going to deteriorate because the glasses are doing the work for you. What happens is, as you get older, and I'm not saying you're old, or some are, but you know, your eye muscle gets a little bit lazy and it stops focusing. These force it to focus again. So although you may be using glasses now, a year down the line, you may be able to chuck your glasses away and just use these. 20 minutes a day, some eye exercises as well, but that should sort your sight out. Now, can anyone suggest why these aren't in every optician's? Money! We're back to money again, because they'll sell you glasses at 100 quid a shot, whereas 3 quid off eBay, 10 quid off JD Harris, or 20 quid if you go to where he goes. But even at 20 quid, that's cheaper than your glasses. So once, I mean, I've been, like I say, I've been through some very dark places. In about, there were certain times I was thinking just end my life, because they're chemtrailing us, they're putting poison in our food, poison in our water. I won't say the beer, because, you know, you've got to have something. And I thought, well, I might as well do it now. They've got all the big guns, they've got planes, they've got everything. How can I, a simple little man, fight this big monster of a system? And then I discovered a video. It was by a doctor called Bob Beck. He wasn't a doctor of medicine, he was a doctor of science. What he had discovered back in 1990s, it might even have been earlier than that, but his video that he did was 1991. He had created a device, this is 91, so over 25 years ago, or around 25 years ago, he had invented a device that cured AIDS. Really? Yeah. This is it. It's called an RSG2, and that stands for Research Signal Generator. Now, if they put on this, that this cured AIDS, they wouldn't be able to sell it. When I discovered this, I thought, wow, that'd be interesting. Oh, by the way, it also makes colloidal silver. For those that don't know what colloidal silver is, colloidal silver cures the cold, coughs, runny nose, you name it, colloidal silver cure. Whenever I get a cold or a cough or anything like that coming, I will use this device and I'll make myself a pint of colloidal silver and I'll sip it, swill it around my mouth and swallow it, and I'll try and make that last for about an hour. Yeah, I'm going to get to that because the story does continue. This is just, I do divert from time to time. So, by itself, this cures the common cold. It's worth it for that, I would suspect. However, like I said, he actually invented it to cure AIDS. And what you do, you plug it into that device and you put some elastic straps around your wrists, pop these two devices with a cotton sheath over them onto your wrist, and it basically zaps your bloodstream. And for everybody apart from one, when you're using it, your hand contorts like that. I bought it because I thought, if this does what it said, who's not going to want a device like that? Then he also said something else which I thought, nah, can't be. What he did is he gave these devices free to people he knew that had AIDS. They'd disappear for 2-3 months, then they'd come back and they'd say, Bob, I've no longer got AIDS. Of course, Bob, being a doctor of science, he understood how it worked. What it does, it somehow alters the outer protein layer of the AIDS virus. Now, if you don't know how AIDS is supposedly so deadly, it's because, for instance, say that that's the AIDS virus, and your body makes something that will fit perfectly round that fist. But when it's made that antibody, the AIDS virus has changed to that, so it doesn't fit. So the AIDS virus carries on attacking you. What this did, by altering the outer protein layer of the AIDS virus, it effectively locks it shut. so it can no longer mutate, it can no longer change. Your natural immune system will actually attack it, kill it, get rid of it. So Bob says, yeah, I know. And one of the guys says, no, Bob, wait. I had cancer too, and it's cured me. It's cured. This cures cancer. I'm not saying all cancer. It cures cancer. Why am I so adamant that it does? Well, Russ is going to tell us.
It's my understanding that he offered to do that. He actually asked for government funding.
Yes, yeah.
To go and do that, and they refused it. I'm quite sure I read somewhere that he treated 1,000 patients.
He's cured many more than 1,000. Yeah. Well, so the reason that the government said no is because the governments are owned by the banks, who also own the pharmaceutical companies, who make billions of pounds from pretending to try and cure you. Strange that. They never seem to actually cure you. They just seem to let you live a little bit longer so you can pay a bit more. You got a question? Why are they so eager to? Because while you're IOUing, you owe them. As long as you owe them, they've got control over you. Because it's such, I think it was either Hitler or Goering that said, if you're going to tell a lie, make it so big that the people's mind will reject it. And just because I said that money isn't worth anything, and for the time it is, because you can get to the bar and you can buy a beer, but you haven't actually bought the beer, you've just given them an IOU, which they take to the banks. Yeah. The Queen never has cash. She doesn't need it because she knows cash is just a control system. That's all cash is. It's a control system. Do as you're told or you're not getting paid. Do as you're told or you're not getting fed. And when they start trying to implant you with chips, it'll do as you're told or you're going to die. And they're very close to implanting them chips, I can tell you that. There was a question, he put his hand up and put it down. Good. Oh, damn. Yeah. Everything's about control. So, back to that for a moment. Why do I believe that works? Well, it's about 2000 I guess it'd be about 2006 now. I bought the device. I thought, yeah. First thing I did was zap myself stupid. Yeah, you've got to try it, haven't you? You know, you can't just tell someone something if you haven't tried it yourself. I drank loads of colloidal silver. Didn't turn purple, you'll notice, or blue, or whatever colour the Agira can do you. I've also got a book written by, endorsed by a doctor that explains why Agira sometimes happens and how you can reverse it, but they don't want you to know that either. So, 6 months after I bought it, I say 6 months, roughly, someone I know got something wrong with them. The doctor sent him to the hospital. They did all these tests, sent him back home, said, yeah, your doctor will call you for your results. Sometime later, a few days maybe, I can't remember exactly now, I'll say it's nearly 10 years ago, gets the call to come in to see the doctor. And the doctor adds, and bring someone with you. Now, if ever you get that call, that's not good news. Off they go to the doctors anyway. They go in, and they get this x-ray out of a chest, and they pop it up on the screen, and they say, you see, if that's the chest, you see this big black mass here? Because yeah, that's cancer. I want you back at the hospital within a week to see how aggressive it is, how much it's spreading. They came out of the doctors, and they called the friends and family, saying that she's going to die, she's going to die. She called me, and I says, no worry, we'll sort it out with the Bob Beck device. And of course, I got the response I sort of expected. You're crazy. Yeah, I understand. Anyway, she decided she was going to try it. Now, Bob Beck originally said it would take 30 days to cure cancer with this device. However, in his later videos up into around about the 2000s, because he died in 2002, he now then realised it was merely 5 days to cure cancer. I'm not saying all cancers, but he does have other devices that can get to other cancers that maybe can't. She came down. She had it she had it on the Tuesday. It's 2 hours a day, but don't believe a word I say about that. You've got to check that out yourself, because if you're ill, 2 hours could kill you. What it does is it kills all the bad viruses and bacteria in your body, and if you're using 2 hours straight off, you can actually overload yourself with dead cells. So you would work up 10 minutes one day, 20 minutes, 30, up to 2 hours, unless you're healthy enough and you try it for 2 hours and you're fine. I didn't know at the time, so she was a bit of a test case, but 2 hours straight off, here we go. She did that for 3 days. The 4th day she didn't come down. 5th day she was back at the hospital. The hospital ran every test they could imagine, and some they probably didn't need to, but they couldn't find cancer. That's just one cure. So, if you remember, I was telling you how I If you remember, I was telling how I was very close to thinking I might as well kill myself. Well, it's when I discovered cures for cancer, I thought, well, actually, they're not so powerful, are they? Because we can do this. And that sort of brought me back around. And then I did more research and I found more cures for, well, bad eyesight, the common cold, you name it. It was similar. It was very similar. Yep. Yep. There was also a device which worked with those bulb things that we used to have in TVs. I forget what they're called now. It's been tubes. Yeah, then tubes. There was one that was invented in Australia in the 20s, and doctors in the UK used to use them for a while till they realised they cured things. Then they stopped. Yeah. Yeah. I can actually be arrested for telling you that cures cancer. Oh, they're all at it now. Yeah. Yep, yep. As well as that, there's the Gerson. And I'm just going to give you a few names. If you're interested, you'll look them up yourself and make your own decision, because I could be wrong. I've been known to be in the past occasionally. But check it out. The Gerson therapy. That was cured from the 1920s. Charlotte Gerson, who's still alive today, was the first person cured by this particular method. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Look it up if you're interested, the Gerson therapy. There's a clinic in Mexico, there's a clinic in Holland, there's a clinic in Japan, there was a clinic in Spain, I'm not sure if it's still there, curing people. Lateral presenting, yeah, see, there's so many cures that we don't know about. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to say I'm in a room full of men and women that know there are many cures out there. Yeah, yeah. MMS, there's another one. Miracle Mineral Supplement. MMS, I didn't discover. I forget his name now. Jim Humble, he discovered that many, many years ago, has cured many of AIDS. What's that thing where the mosquitoes bite you? And cures malaria. He's cured hundreds of thousands of people until the government, I think it was one of the African countries, I can't remember its name now, it might even be South American, until the government said, stop using that, otherwise the pharmaceutical companies are not going to provide us with any more money. So he was curing people, but he was told not to stop curing because of that. There are many others, but I'm sure an informed audience as this will know of many of them anyway. Is there anything else? Oh, yeah, this is probably one of the easiest ones there is. What's that? If it was, it would be exterminating. Now, this is an inhaler. However, it's not an asthma inhaler as such. This is, as you can see on it, it says Solitaire. This has got Romanian rock salt crystals in it, and you breathe through it for about 20 minutes a day. Now, if you've got asthma, it should alleviate your asthma. And when I was doing a talk back in 3-4 years ago, I can't remember, it was actually in Manchester then as well. Rob Freeman was there, and he'd heard me talk about this, and he'd got some for his kids. And within a month, his kids were no longer using inhalers. And by the time he'd come to that meeting, he was saying they were being cured from asthma. Now, I'm not saying this will cure asthma. It will make it better. And as a side effect, maybe it'll cure it as well. But it's well worth a go. It's about 20 quid. Excuse me. If you've got anyone that suffers it, buy them it for the birthday or Christmas. If you do those crazy, stupid, corporate rub-a-dub days. Yeah. Yeah. Years ago, when I was crazy, because I'm saying now, right, Anna? Okay, right. They wanted to put me on a drug, and I read the side effects, and one of the side effects was death. I thought, nah, I don't want to miss, mate. Thanks. Thanks for all the help, but no thanks. Oh, there's one other cure that I will share with you. Some of you have been partaking in it anyway, outside, and that's that herb, hemp. Hemp cures cancer. Not all cancers, but a lot. Again, I'm quite certain of this because I know someone that had cancer, managed to get some of the Rick Simpson oil, and has no longer got cancer. So there are many cures for almost everything. What causes the problems are dis-ease. Dis-ease. Not disease, dis-ease. When we're not at ease. Why do you think there's so many cases of cancer? Well, apart from the poison in the food, the poison in the drinks, it's because we're under stress all the time, because that's how the system works. It likes to keep you under stress because they know that we break down under stress and we get ill. So, if nothing else, you get nothing else from this talk, which I hope you do, of course, but, hey-ho. If you get nothing else, most important thing I would like to leave you all with is lose the fear. They thrive on fear. You lose the fear, you see how strong you become very quickly. And at that, thank you.
I have to wait for the laptop man to. I need this. Can you hear me okay? It's a wheel and a sex toy, this thing. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, I talk normally. I'll raise my voice.
Very strong
Right, guys, I'll give you an introduction then until such times as. Shh. Hello? I'll go home if you want. I'm not getting paid for this. Right. Well, you don't have to. What I try and do, guys, okay? My name's Rob, just for those who don't know. What I try and do is, my background is I lost my front teeth there. It was my little brother was getting bullied at school by a much bigger lad. And one day I girled up the courage, shitting myself, and went for him. And I kicked the shit out of him. I lost my two front teeth, but I kicked the shit out of him. And that was the day my life changed, because I realised no need to be scared of big tough guys. Okay? And I was only a little skinny scrote of a lad, from Soviet Socialist Republic of West Central Scotland. And a shitty school and all that. But anyway, I realised you've got to stand up for yourself. You've got to stand up for your friends and your family and bugger the consequences, because at the end of the day, bullying is wrong. And I don't mean bullying in that sense. I mean, genuinely, there's a lot of people out there who make a living out of bullying. And it's wrong. It's wrong. They terrify people. They're told terrorists. Bullying's a form of terrorism. Anyway, so I joined the army at 16, partly because there was no other jobs in the area at the time, but also because I felt a kind of obligation to go and help the world by, thought being a good guy, I would stop poor people getting bullied by big aggressors and that stuff, The evil Russians were there, how much my mind changed in that one. And after 2 years boy service, 5 years man service, I bought myself out of the army because I didn't know who I was fighting for and what my purpose was. I didn't know. And I saw a few things as well. And as I'm just now affiliated with an organisation called Veterans for Peace. They're beautiful people. They're ex-soldiers, and they don't go for this help the heroes crap either. These are genuinely what these guys are going out there telling guys, don't join the army, which is now a criminal offence. I'm now breaking the law by doing this. That's now a criminal offence. Telling people to. Yeah. So anyway, there's a very good website. I'd like to give some credence to it. actionmanbattlefield.com, and what they've done is, remember the old Action Man advert, a puppet, a doll of soldier type person, and selling to kids. Zooming in and out. The adverts were selling this to kids. Action Man with moving eyes and guns and the uniforms, making it all sexy. They've used the Action Men, and one's called Alcoholic Action Man, the other one's called PTSD Action Man, the other one's called Dead Action Man. They've done the same adverts, all like all dynamic and stuff. And it's a superb job. It's 2 minutes, 20 seconds long. So anyone with the short attention span can watch us. But these guys have been very successful in attending military recruitment fairs and getting families to take their boys and girls away from it. Yeah. So very, very good work. Now, in the back of that, we can do anything. I get new people coming. I noticed some fairly new faces here tonight, and I get new people. Where do I start, Rob? What do I do? Where do I start, Rob? I don't know. First of all, I don't know where you want to be. And the place to start where you're doing this, what is your goal? At what point can you say, I've now achieved what I set out to achieve? Remember the Iraq debacle? We didn't know where we went in there. Even worse, we didn't know when whoever it was invaded it wanted to pull out again. There was no end game. So you guys doing what you're doing need to understand, at what point can I say I've achieved what I set out to achieve? My goal is very simple. On my grave marker, I want the simple words, he lived and died his own man. What happens in between then, I don't care about. That's all I want on my grave marker. So hopefully that's given you a bit of background into myself. Now, I've done some. I read a lot of books, and what I try and do is summarise books and bring it to people who maybe have got problems reading, can't be arsed reading, don't have the money to buy books, whatever. Books are cheap. You can get books for free if you ask around. There's plenty of books, and people are willing to lend the books out. But an area, slavery, what Mark was, Salome was talking about earlier on there. This is powerful stuff, guys. I've done a talk on slavery. I'll happily do more talks. I'm doing a talk this weekend. And I mean, how many people in this room are opposed to slavery, think slavery is the most obnoxious, terrible thing that one human being could do to another human being? Does anyone agree that slavery is a good thing? Does anyone actually think slavery in any way can be excused or licensed or not? Okay. Next question. Next question. How many people can give me the legal definition of the word? How many people can give me the legal definition of the word slavery? The legal definition of slavery. So you're all against it. See a point I'm trying to make? I'm just trying to make a point. I didn't know this myself. Right? So you're all against it, but you don't actually know what it is you're against. Okay. Okay, we've had a lot of guesses, and this is the point I'm trying to make here, right? I can give you the legal definition. The other side have got to work to. You're going to invent stuff that they'll hand your arse to you with, right? So you need to know the definitions of these things, right? Because once you know definitions, it's very, 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 very powerful. I'm not going to do a talk in slavery tonight. I will do another talk in the Ashton meet in a couple of weeks' time, probably, on slavery again. This is probably the most important talk you can get ever at slavery. Now, the slavery is was any or all claim of ownership over a man or woman. That's it. You're inventing stuff. No, everybody's got a view. It's like the word racism. It's like the word sexism. Everybody's got a view what it is because you don't know the meanings. And the correct response to that, now what we're dealing with now is facts, right? The correct response is, do you know the definition of slavery? No. If you're starting to guess stuff, I promise you, you will get your arse handed to you in court. If you try and guess stuff, you have to learn to read and quote back at them, word for word, without adding anything, without putting emotion in there, keeping the politics out of it, quote them word for word what it says, right? The minute you divert from that, I would hand you your arse on a plate. Right, well. Right. Well, now if you actually go, now where you now fire back is you look at the codes of practice. There's a judicial code of conduct. Did you know that? Judicial code of conduct. There's the 7 principles of public life they must comply with. Yep. The judicial code of conduct. That judge, whoever it was who made that decision, I don't know, as a Justice Clerk's, Assistant Justice Clerk's, the conduct guide is called the Justice Clerk's orders. It's on legislation.gov. You can look up the judges' orders. You can look up, they've all got codes of practice, right? And in every code of practice, it will say you will comply with the Convention on Human Rights. And if you don't do that, you've now got a formal complaint against them. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Then you get the psychologists that they get, then you get the solicitors, and then all the way through,
yeah, yeah.
The other side is, every time I try and put something into place, like for instance, I just have overnight contact when I get a letter, and then I just seem to be pragmatic.
You are. You're being an absolute pain in the back. That's what your job is. Yeah. Yeah.
By all means, happy for doing that. If you want to take parental responsibility, then put into place taking liability.
Yeah.
Should anything
Yeah,
happen to
yeah,
us, put
yeah.
money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Don't be pissed. Say ignorance of law is no
It's
excuse.
risky,
Say ignorance of law is no excuse. And when you call sick, you fucking hate it.
Right.
I don't like to be told what.
There's two concepts across all jurisdictions, and this includes what we're going to talk about now, military. Because as far as we know, nobody else has covered military, right? Now, there's two things across all of those. One of them is private property rights, another one is slavery. That's it. You go in there arguing anything else, blah, 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 right? So, this talk's called An Occupied People. Now, we'll cover what the definition of occupied is. We'll cover the definition of occupied territories. We'll cover these definitions, and I'll prove to you, I'll confirm what we've got is. I'll give you a very brief, actually, occupied territory, it's international humanitarian law, right? And it's the highest form of law. You are going to the state, arguing anything otherwise, asking them to find against themselves. Because the only one in that room is not a member of state, sometimes, is yourself. The only law they have to comply with is international public or private law. That's it. A humanitarian law. And this is what we're going to be throwing at them. Now, anyway, there was an article, Daily Mail, whatever, right? But it was, interestingly, it's Peter Hitchens, columnist, Daily Mail, very, very outspoken gentleman, believes in private rights, individual rights. And Prince Charles meeting Jerry Adams was the background story. But anyway, he says, there's no point in protesting against it. Worse things will be happening soon, against which we'll be equally powerless. That is the most important word in English language, power. Because everything happens as a power struggle, okay? And this is law, that's law. It's like, as I've said, it is like living in a defeated and occupied country. He's telling us. And I could spend the rest of the night putting up articles and comments from numerous big names you've heard of, all saying the same thing. Yeah. So just be aware. Peter Hitchens is commenting on defeated and conquered occupied country. Next slide, mate.
No longer a part of the UK. It's owned by Hong Kong.
Yeah, it's a region. City region. Yeah. Yes, as is Scotland. 9 of them in England, and there's Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland are city regions as well. England's got 9 city regions. This is a new form. Anyway, I will cover that shortly, right? This is the point where I ask people, do you believe that we are occupied? And you go, no, of course, we're not. We're British. Nobody's invaded us, blah, blah, blah. We've been occupied since the Norman, this is from Smith and Keenan's English law, since the Norman conquest, absolute ownership of land has been impossible. William the Conqueror considered himself owner of all land in England and parcelled it out to his barons, who became its tenants. Well, William the Bastard, yeah. Anyway, so, very good book. I read this 3 weeks ago now, and I wish I'd read this 4 years ago. And it's called Who Owns the World? By a chap called Kevin Cahill. So that's Kevin, and his surname is C-A-H-I-L-L, Kevin Cahill, Who Owns the World? Anyway, and he confirms that legally, militarily, Her Majesty the Queen owns all of Britain. We are and can only ever be tenants. You can argue as much as you want. She's got an army to say otherwise. Who did swear allegiance to?
Only by consent and ignorance.
She's got an army that will make you say otherwise. She's got a load of policemen out there who'll make you say otherwise.
When it affects their families, and it's on their
I understand what you're saying. She will send an army in to beat the crap at you, put you in Abu Ghraib, send you, it's law force. Yeah. Yeah. All you have, hold on, guys. Please, I've got a short period of time here. Yeah. All we have is usufruct. Have you all heard of usufruct? We've got the right to use. When you get a mortgage, you think, I own my house. You own nothing other than the right to use. You are a tenant. Okay, that law of distress is applied upon tenants. It was until recently, if you were done for speeding on the roads, anything on the roads, parking tickets, you're charged under law of, you're pursued under law of distress. Okay, and this is what it is because we are deemed to be tenants. I'll explain what we've done.
Okay. Right, occupation, good word to know, okay? It's not conquest. Conquest is military. That's where you take over and you now own everything. It's now my shit. I'm going to kill all you guys. That's now mine. Anyone argues, blade in the chest, right? That's conquest, different thing. Occupation, an activity that serves as one's regular source of livelihood, a vocation, okay? An activity engaged in especially as a means of passing time and avocation, the active process of holding or possessing a place. Okay, so it's now called law of possession. You've got possessory title. So if I come in to your front garden, I've got machine guns and 100 guys behind me, we're going to take it off you, and we now move in and say that's now our garden, right? I'll take you out, you're dead, I now possess it. I might not have it legally, but there's two ways of doing this. You can do it by force or by guile. You can do it de facto, just the fact of doing it, which is generally military, or you can do it through law de jure. There's different ways of doing it. Anyway, so next one, mate. So occupation, be aware what it is, right? So it's possessory title. You're possessing something, okay? JAGs, American stuff, I'm showing you this covers all jurisdictions. There's JAGs and military, right? The term military government is used to describe supreme authority exercised by an armed force over the lands, property, and inhabitants of enemy territory or allied or domestic territory recovered from enemy occupation. Okay, so these guys now manipulate international law to create a situation of occupation. Iraq was a good example. Afghanistan was a good example. There was no war there. Falklands. How many people think it was the Falklands War? Conflict. Wasn't a war. Since 1977, there can't be any wars. But what happened was the Falklanders invited the British to come in to defend them. Okay, you'll find that during the second, when you understand, you start reading this international law of occupation, when you realise in the Second World War, you read it a lot differently. You'll read it a lot differently. Who was breaking the law and who wasn't actually breaking international law. But as I say, there's numerous ways you can go in. You can go in and invade. You can be invited in to help defend as an ally, or you can be invited in as a peacekeeper. Yeah. And generally what the other side tried to do, because there's a lot of obligations, as you're about to find out, on being an occupier. So, there's a lot of obligations. These guys try and dodge the obligations I'm about to show you here. And to do that, they try and find inventive new legal ways of getting around it. We're not here as an occupying force. We're here as a peacekeeping force. You've heard of peacekeeping force before, yeah? It's peacekeepers. Yeah. We're not a dude regime change. We're here to assist the new regime that we finance behind the scenes. But what they do is they just get round. There's a very good book by a chap called Ayal Ben Venista. I might have mentioned it here. I'll spell his name because this is a book you need to buy for your library. It's Eyal, Ayal Ben Venisti. So it's Benvenisti. Does anyone want to repeat that? Right, and it's called The International Law of Occupation. And I've talked, I don't know the guy, I've got no vested interest. I found it the best book, and it's written the way that a page turner. It's not a dry, dusty book. And he's an Israeli, and he's critical of the Israelis and Palestine, etc. But what he's done is he explains to us the background, Geneva Convention, Hague Convention, etc., and then takes examples around the world, like the Russians going into South Georgia. You remember that? A couple of years back, East Ukraine, East Timor, gives a number of examples of how we're not really invading. Yeah, it's private contractors that are invading. That's the newest one. There's more soldiers employed in the world as private contractors than they are actually state soldiers. It's a way of getting around international law because they have a lot of obligations. So the term occupied territory is used to mean any area in which your military government is exercised by an armed force. Who's the armed force in the UK? They're just a contractor. Who's the military force that's occupied the UK? MOD's part of it. NATO. Who runs all the military bases in the UK? NATO. NATO. Inventing stuff. NATO. I can't prove a thing. I'm going into court arguing stuff I can prove. Right. Anyway, so the NATO is the force, okay? Are NATO actually a state army? Do they belong to one state? I'll consider them to be military contractors out for hire, as far as I'm concerned. But you'll find who was invaded Iraq?
Why is no one attacked Israel?
NATO. Because NATO and Israel got nuclear weapons. NATO got nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons brings a new whole realm into this as well. Okay.
But Iran's not attacked no one in 240 odd years.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Peaceful nation.
Yeah. I would say we need, if you understand international law of occupation, you suddenly start to understand how these guys are operating. Because most people will talk to me all day about the Second World War and talk utter shit because they don't understand international law of occupation. When you understand international law of occupation, you start to understand Napoleonic War. You start to understand Second World War. You start to understand Israel. All these different conflicts taking place, Middle East. Sovereignty, this is key. Sovereignty is not transferred by reason of occupation, but the right of control passes to the occupying force, limited only now. I'll stop at that point, right? I'll repeat that. Sovereignty is not transferred by reason of occupation. So the sovereign power cannot be transferred or ousted by the occupying power, but the right of control passes to occupying the occupying force. So they become an administrative occupational force. That's where it gets key. Limited only by international law and custom. Not by people getting in there shouting Constitution or Magna Carta or any other nonsense. That's the only thing that they've got to comply with.
Custom not called up all the things like Magna Carta and stuff like traditional customs for people, indigenous people.
Yeah. There's quite a few customs, but again, it'll be case law. To go to customs, you have to go through case.
But once again, that sort of saving to the 1%. People put stuff together. You're already dirty bastard in the first place.
Right.
Right.
There's two ways of doing it. One, you can go in the militarily, right? Another way is to become their friend. I'll explain why, right? So do you want to just do the next one? Right. Hague Conventions, just very brief background. You need to read Conventions of 1899 and 1907. Those were the first multilateral treaties that addressed the conducts of warfare, but largely based on the Lieber Code. And Lieber Code was the code that was developed between the North and South in the United States of America during the Civil War. So Europe went, that's a bloody good idea, that, because there's a book by a chap called Hugo Grotius, called Rights of Law and Peace. And I say this with absolute hand on heart, it's the most important book ever written. Forget your Bible, forget your Qurans, forget all that crap, right? It's The Rights of War and Peace by Hugo Grotius. You can get it for free on the net. It was written in 1450 something.
Like with all this instead into the laws and crap like that.
Don't need any brick stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, don't be disrespectful, right? If I've got a gun, I've had the gun, I've been in the army, I'll make you fucking beg for mercy. This is the power they've got. I'm being honest here. These guys have got the power to do that, right? Yeah. Right. And I'm about to show you how to use this stuff now. I'm just showing you the mechanism, and then I'll show you how we can start playing with them. Right. Hugo Grotius, Grotius. It's called The Rights of War and Peace. It's not called the Law of War and Peace. It's called the Rights of War and Peace. Because what happens when you in World War and Peace, you're given rights. How many people know there's peacekeepers? There's all peacekeepers that people are talking about. Can anyone in the room give me the definition of the word peace? Somebody doing it? And a common sense, yeah. Peace comes from the French word pais. It's P-A-I-S. Excuse my crap French accent. P-A-I-S, right? And it means where an occupying or an existing power is not subject to challenge. War is where they are subject to a challenge. There's two states. They're either subject to challenge or they're not subject to challenge. Think of that very carefully if you use that word peace. Because if you say peace and then you're challenging them, you're not at peace, you're at war. Okay? This is international law.
Say that again.
There's two states, you're either at peace or you're at war. Somebody else has said tranquility. Before this war crap happened, right? We live in tranquility before laws and governments. However, under modern world, there's either war or peace. That's it, okay? War is where the existing power is subject to a challenge, right? Peace is where the existing power is not subject to a challenge, right? Okay, right. So peace just means what? So what does a peacekeeper do? What does the army do? What's the job of the army as peacekeepers? What's their job in Britain?
Keep peace.
Which is to stop any challenge to the existing regime. What's the police's job as peacekeepers? Now you're seeing the proper job with them. Now you can start dealing with them, knowing what they are.
That's a very unlikely statement.
What's that?
Very unlikely statement.
I thought you said exciting.
Yeah, I know, but now we know what they are. Now we know what their job is. Yeah. Oh, sorry, lighting. I said light statement. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that is. I try and put stuff on the table, joins dots, you know, so thank you. So be aware what a peacekeeper is. I don't wish to live in peace or in war, because I don't want any authority tell me to do either way. Did you know that after 1952, there's no such thing as proper neutrality? There's no such thing as a neutral. Be aware of that, right? The NATO, because of the conduct of the American government in the Second World War, where they were neutral, but not really, because they were supplying weapons to the Russians and they were supplying weapons to the British, and Ireland wasn't exactly neutral either. 1952, NATO, we never want this to happen again. So the NATO then decided a neutral country is merely a non-combatant country who hasn't chosen sides yet. They're still a threat. Okay, so you're either, George Bush was his famous saying, you're either with us or against us. The law, right? So be aware of that one. Now there is a thing, if you read through the key conventions, called protected persons. If you wish to really have fun going as a protected person, there's various ways of doing it. You can be religious, you can be, a recognised church, you can be humanitarian, which is the route we're going down. You can be a doctor, Doctors Without Frontiers, Red Cross, all these organisations, right? They are recognised as being neutral, or protected parties is more correct, yeah? Humanitarian is the route I would suggest that people need to be going down, because what we're doing is protecting ourselves against abuses of international law. Right, so law of occupation, I'll give you the very basic concepts of it, right? Sovereignty may not be alienated through the use of force, right? Now, Hugo's rights of Grotius and peace, going back even to the Romans, going back to the Greeks, right? The big problem they had was an occupying force would come in, get your shit out of the locals, nab their stuff off them. What do the locals do after that? They say, bugger that, I want my fucking house back. I want my property back. Yep, so they fight. So, like of Alexander the Great, he moved into a territory. What he didn't do was claim property rights. It was very, very clever. So people asked to loan my shit. But now he's the boss. So it was very, very clever. And as a result, Alexander had a huge empire and very few people fighting him. Anyway, more importantly, since 1873, I think it was, the Treaty of Brussels, it was decided within Europe that no occupying power can claim ownership of the private property of the existing sovereign power, right? That's really, really, really important to know, yeah? So one of the purposes of the occupying power became to protect private property interests. This is what they do. Now remember I said earlier on who owns the UK legally? Her Majesty the Queen. Occupying powers go to protect the private property interests. They're there to protect the Queen and her private property interests. Because there's very little property we can actually own. We can own goods, but we can't really own property. So, but anyway, the sovereignty may not be alienated through the use of force, so they can't physically take your private shit off you if you own it. But if you're a tenant, they can kick you out. Advice to fill the spatial problem. Watch out for that word spatial with a T. It's French, okay? And it's Agenda 21. It's entirely an Agenda 21 word, yeah? It's not an English word at all. You never used to see that word. And the spatial problem is for organising the transport, for organising ports, airports, where people live, moving people around, building camps, building military air bases. So this sort of civil structure of the area, the occupied territory. They can use law of occupation to get around the existing planning laws, to get around the existing common laws, to get around the constitution. Oh, then civil law, acts and statutes, then get around that by claiming we're using law of occupation.
Get around it.
But just do it
No, but-
by issuing executive orders instead of going through Parliament. Right, if you go on legislation.gov and do a search, orders or order 2015, put those two words in, right, and watch page in the last year.
That's actually statute.
No, this is the executive orders. Order.
Articles, laws, from Magna Carta, really, it's an order.
Yeah.
There's
But
no point having, I've got freehold property, my house, it means nothing.
no, if they come in and decide they want it, they'll take it off you. But what they'll need to do,
Anything that you register, it's not yours. Regis.
but what they'll do, they need to claim, and this is a point I was trying to make earlier on there, necessity. They have obligations and duties, right? And they must claim necessity for enforcing the stuff, right? You need to come in with a bigger necessity to stop them doing it.
Is this why the same with a war? Or is
Yeah.
it the same
Oh,
with a war?
climate change. Now you understand what climate change is. Their skies are going to fall on us, blah, blah. You need to pay us more taxes so we can pay these guys money. But it's all, so what we need to do is more emergency powers. Interesting exercise. Go into MI5 website, yeah, and look up a status of alert, the UK national state. At the moment, I believe it's up at red because there's some imminent little brown fella going to do some shit.
I've just found this out today.
Where's that? Where?
MI5.
I'll guess it's a port authority. It's Manchester, Salford Keys.
No. Close up. It's a Bury.
Berry.
Worth Industrial Estate in Bury. Where you have Asda,
Yeah,
which in America is Walmart.
yeah. Americans, yeah.
You have the cinema that's closed down in the Sandy. You've got Megaboat that is now closed down in Andy. You have all the restaurants that's in the area that's closed down in Andy.
Yeah.
You have now Asda that's turned around and says, we are closing this area because it's not viable because everything else is closed in it. Right? Do you not think there's a FEMA count?
I'll tell you exactly what they're doing.
Because of the yellow dots,
The orange dots
and the red dots that I've seen around Bury,
I've gone to the planning commission, planning office, I've asked them, can you tell me what these are? And I went, well, there's no planning area, there's not a plan for this. So what are these fucking marks that's being put around Bury? There's no planning commission going on.
Can I give you a suggestion for that?
Becoming a FEMA camp.
She's just on that road.
Yeah.
Around the back, facing.
Yeah.
Face lot. It's reinforced fencing.
Yeah.
Like 3 gates to get in.
4 gates to
Like
get in.
structure. It's like building you under.
Yes.
Yeah.
Posted servicing.
Well, it's
on Thursday night, 4 helicopters were hovering over. I've got photographs, I've got video, I've got because it's very close to me. 4 helicopters hovering over it on Thursday night.
Right. Okay. So what I'll do is let me try and explain something. With 3 years ago, I started reading up on this international law, and I realised transport between ports. I started looking at the ports. Very interesting area, right? Because you understand it's a grey area. When you talk about port authorities, it becomes a very grey area. And all port authorities are given a power under executive order, and they're exempt of British law. They're not part of Britain. Okay, so I wonder how big that is. If I can guarantee, if the name of your towns, you get Ford, Water, anything along that, and it is maritime, right? It's in the maritime jurisdiction. But it's got port authority territory on it. And then I started looking, why did they build all these new schools and police stations and courts? Remember, Brown spent billions of our money in crap PFI schemes to build new buildings. With old buildings, we just needed a bit of a refit. So I started looking, and there's a test for you to do. Look at your own local magistrate's court. This is the people watching this as well, right? Is it on water, next to water, or adjacent to water? Or in case of the Minister of Building in Manchester, is it above water because on the canal? That one stumped me. I'll talk about that in a minute, yeah. Now the next one is the I was talking to a chap in America. He went, bugger me, it's next to water, the new court. Funny that. Talking to a chap in New Zealand. And he went, no, there's no water next to it. I goes, what street's it on? He goes, hold on, Water Street. Right. Down at the Tom Crawford's hearing, they moved the court at the last minute. So I'd already warned, so the peacekeepers were going to go in there and take back the control on the Magna Carta, right? So I went down to the went down there, the sergeant's there, you know, and he's wearing the blue vest. There's a clue. Blue vest, yeah. And it's Bo's next to it, right next to it. Canal, what's opposite the canal? British Waterways headquarters, that area, right? So I asked the sergeant, at that point I realised I'm on international territory. So I held up the white flag of Parley, international flag, and yeah. I don't get into conspiracy stuff. I know there's a lot of people out there. I don't frighten people. I try and bring people solutions. No due respect, right? I understand it's easy to frighten you. I can frighten the fuck out of everybody in this room if you want, or I can try and bring you some solutions, right? I can spend an hour talking about, you know, the crap that's going on behind the scenes. You know what's happening in Scotland as well, and England, and city regions, and how they're stripping us. I mean, I can talk about that, but I'm trying to bring solutions, you know, to give new people ideas and hope. And there's a lot we can do with this. Anyway, so as I said, so look at port authorities and ask that copper. I said, oh, sorry, that policy officer, the company man, as I call them, and everybody stops calling them policemen today and starts calling them what they are, company men. If you read into East India Company, they're company men, right? Anyway, because they're there to protect the company. They work for the company. They're employed by the company. Why are we calling them police officers? Anyway, so but asked them, is this port authority controlled or port authority? Is this a port authority controlled building or port authority owned area, or port authority operated area? And this is done under executive order from Secretary of State, by the way. Why do you need to know that? That's what, is it or isn't it? You know, I'll need to ask and find out. Bollocks, please. Any policeman from Britain or UK, as it is now, occupying power, stepping into port authority to jurisdiction has no powers unless he's written powers. He's no powers of arrest. All you can do is ask.
Are certain roadways now designated as waterways?
Yes, all roads are waterways. 1835 Drainage Act. 1835 Drainage Act states all tributaries spilling into an inland waterway are deemed to be part of that inland waterway. So they're too busy talking. So you think at next time I'm sitting in the toilet. Any waterways, tributaries of waterways spilling into inland waterways are deemed to be part of that. And I got that from Leeds. There's a lady from Leeds in earlier on there. And I got that from one of the head engineers from Leeds County Council, Leeds Borough Council, Town Council, whatever they were at the time, City Council. And he told me that, and I was an engineer at the time doing work. And he said, you know, the roads are deemed to be canals. I was like, yeah, backside. Because we were non-adopted, they couldn't make it a canal. Think of what your house is. Remember, your house extends halfway onto the road. If you're not aware of that, there's a curtilage under common law, which extends halfway onto the road, and you're responsible for that. So part of your property goes onto the middle of the road, right? So they've got a maritime, military, common law, ecclesiastical law. They've got numerous jurisdictions under council tax. But I'm not here to talk about council tax. I did that on Monday night at St Anne's, and I would urge you to go into Dignity Alliance YouTube channel and watch your talk I did on Monday night, because this is what I will do my work on, and I've exposed that these are. I'll explain why there's multiple councils. Councils have got multiple identities. They don't like me. Really don't like me. We've had 2 articles now posted in the local paper, one by myself and one by one of my friends. And the local papers running articles now. Who is Wigan Council? And the talk I did Monday night was who the fuck is Wigan Council? But anyway,
how many legal entities have Wigan Council got?
Sorry?
How many legal entities?
Oh, I had no idea.
Have they got more than 7?
All I need to know is more than one. That's all I need to know is more than one. That's a chap. Well, we're getting told 3. 2 people are fraudulently claiming they are, and there's actually only one. We'll cover council tax another day if you want. I'm going to that in some depth. I don't tell you how to get out of council tax, because once you understand how it works, you'll know what to do. Ask them simple questions. Who are you? Where does your authority come from? who the fuck do you think I am? And feel free to swear at them. And that's as far as I go. That's as far as I get with them. Liability orders. Well, we'll talk about the liability order with slavery, because the liability order now you start to. Anyway, I don't want to talk publicly what we're doing, but yeah. Liability order gives them no powers. All it does is a private tribunal recognises a debt obligation exists. It doesn't empower anybody to do jack shit. It only recognises that a debt obligation exists, right? What they can do with that, when you get the bailiffs at your door, I tend to be very abrupt with them. Footpaths there, you choose to end up on it. You know, full stop. Again, we've got to be careful what we say in the camera. Brussels Declaration 1874, sorry. The territory is considered occupied when it is actually placed under authority of the hostile army. Civil War. What happened in the Civil War? English Civil War. British Civil War as it actually was, but anyway. Britain became England. Let's look at England. Leave the door open. Anyway, obviously boredom. Yeah, so under the Civil War, what happened was the king was the occupier, and every king, when the king died and the new king took his place, the property was abandoned and then reoccupied again. Abandoned, reoccupied. The king is dead, long live the king. So it was that fraction of a second between those two words was how long it was up for grabs. Anyway, so Cromwell came in with these generals and his executive, because what does an executive do? It executes orders. Think of that next time you're talking to an executive power, the chief executive officer. 3 military words there of your council. So territory is considered, this is European, this is still the fact, right? Territory is considered occupied when it is actually placed under authority of the hostile army. Okay, did you know that all motorways and major roads, major highways are all military roads? Yeah, that's why the police have slightly different powers and look slightly different from other policemen. The occupation exists only to the territory where such authority has been and can be exercised, right? Right. No, right. Winston Churchill in 1932, I believe it was, Winston Churchill said, because at that point it was called the road tax, right? And people started saying, oh, we own the roads now, we're paying tax. So they changed it to our vehicle excise duty, and people need to stop calling it a road tax. It's vehicle excise duty. What they've done is stolen it. Yeah, what they've done is stolen it from us. But what they've done is they placed it under what's called Crown Estate Properties, and all these roads are held under Crown Estate Properties and Trust for the public, whatever that is, right? For the public, not for the private, for the public. But anyway, Winston Churchill said, if we keep calling it a tax, the buggers will think they own the roads. Check your stuff yourself. Right, so what we've got, all we're paying for is the right to use, us as individuals, the right to use something owned by the public, whoever the public is. Use the fruct. That's what it is, right? Okay, mate. Next one. Oh yeah, the Joint Services Manual 2004. You can go online, download because of Iraq in 2004 and Afghanistan. Sorry, the British military were forced to rejig their rules of conflict, and what they did was they issued the Joint Services Manual 2004. And I would urge people, whatever crap you're reading on the internet, put it to one side and read the Joint Services Manual 2004, right? It's particularly the section dealing with occupied territories. If you don't believe what I'm saying just now, I'm just talking shit, even though I've got loads of paper to prove it, right? You read that and you go, that's Britain. You read it. They start bringing in that word, authority. We never used to have that, right? So we've got local authorities, billing authorities, transport authorities, port authorities, you know, all these different authorities taking place now, yeah? Authored means it's written, a written order. It's done by written order. Okay, so Oxford Laws of War and Land, 1880, occupied territory. Territory is regarded as occupied when, as a consequence of invasion by hostile forces, the state to which it belongs has ceased in fact to exercise its ordinary authority therein. Blah, 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 blah. That's in 1880. What you can also do is you can abandon your government. So if the government abandons an external power, can say through necessity or through invite, we're going to go in there and bring some peace and law and order to that country where the government's just collapsed or is abandoned. And what's happening in Parliament just now, Westminster? What's happening in Westminster just now? Who's the Parliament? What's the Parliament MPs about to do? They're about to abandon the Parliament, aren't they? and they're even talking about abandoning Westminster because of repairs. Right, be careful what's happening down there. They're abandoning. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. They're abandoning it. They're stepping out of the building. Right, I would say we need to keep one person in that building to make sure it's still occupied. But anyway, so sorry. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just giving you stuff to ponder this one. Yeah, if I abandon this, so if government abandons its post, an external power can come in. That's a good thing. Come in, we'll bring some peace and law and order. Because one of the things we've got to do is bring order. We'll bring peace and law and order to this territory, you know, so people can not live in fear and one thing or another, you know, and so no big gangsters can come and take it over. So they do a humanitarian campaign, right, under the guise. So when you take out Gaddafi, take out Saddam Hussein and that, and you cause complete mayhem under one guise, you then can step in and be invited back in under another guise to keep the peace afterwards. It's very clever these bastards do. Right, so next slide a minute. They have so many obligations under international law. I'm talking about what they can do, and we've talked about what we can now do with it shortly, right? We can go in there and not claim the laws, I promise you. My clan were outlawed in 1380, right, in the borders, right? And my clan... There is a bullet can quickly deal with natural law. Seriously, mate. You know, I understand. I'm with you, and I agree with you, and I love you to death, mate. You know, all I'm saying is a taser or a sparky stick or a boomstick will deal with natural law. Did you know that under British colonial rule, if we were done to a territory where there was deemed to be no civilised power, so for example, if we went in there and there was, I mean, there might have been a culture, African culture or whatever country into, if they didn't have a flag and didn't have an army and didn't have a central control, we went in and put a flag down. It's now ours because it's not civilised. That's because they were living under natural law. So under our law of occupation, and this is to do with our colonial occupation, natural law, no defence. Yeah. I'm saying now we see the game, we can see the game and understand what they've done. So Joint Services Manual 2004, British, this is now British, I'm absolutely entirely British, no foreign crap. To determine whether a state of occupation exists is necessary to look at the area concerned and determine whether two conditions are satisfied. So it's a test to see if it's occupied. First, that the former government has been rendered incapable of publicly exercising its authority in that area. I think the Lisbon Treaty did away with that. I think the European Act. I'd also say, more importantly at the moment, is United Nations Charter, right? Britain, well, UK, I keep saying Britain. There's no legal definition of the word in British, by the way, you should know that. UK signed up to the UN Charter, which makes them the daddy, right? So the former government is rendered incapable of publicly exercising its authority in that area because they have no authority because they're under United Nations control. So that deals with that one. Second, and also Agenda 21 just cements that even deeper. And the EU is a part of the United Nations. It's an invention which itself is the United Nations. Did you know your local council constitution, they now follow a modular format, right? Thank you. You're guilty. They now follow a modular format, right? And who do you think issued and designed that modular format for local authorities? Which government department do you think it was? Secretary of State, Home Secretary. Yeah. Would any of you think it was DEFRA? The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, who are a UN. They're the UN inside the British government. They are UN, and they're also called department. Look for MOTs. Maybe you should MOT your car, right? 10 on the table for anyone who can go away and find Ministry of Transport now. Replaced by a Department of Transport, right? One's sovereign power, and this is the key to what I'm talking about tonight, yeah? Sovereign power, and one's occupying power. So you've got the Ministry of Transport, which is sovereign. Department is a military word. Secretary is a military word.
So when anybody asks why the ministry's changed the department,
Because of changed ownership, yeah, it had been abandoned and changed or surrendered or capitulated in civilian terms. There you go. I'd say you do. I would say you do. This is the route I'm going down. I'm talking, well, you to who you're talking to first. I did a search last week there for land registry, so I typed in UK land registry and his PO box number, fine. I then put in Great Britain Land Registry, and I got an address down in Lincolnsfield, London. Right, Great Britain was occupied by United Kingdom. Right, same as the East India Company occupied India. Right, my own research at this point in time shows that the United Kingdom is the occupying power, the executive occupying administration for the occupying power invaded Great Britain. Where'd you get this information from, Rob? I went and bought on eBay for 20 quid a full set of Encyclopedia Britannica. One example, right? 20 quid it cost me, full box set, brilliant, loads of books, right? Information galore, 1962 pre-EU, yeah, and it came in a nice gold cabinet for 20 quid, right? In there, you can look up Great Britain, 58 pages of tiny, tiny print of just information dump on what Britain is, yeah? You go to 2015 version of Encyclopedia Britannica, and it just says, you put in Great Britain, it says, oh, it's now United Kingdom.
Do you think that's been done to get rid of the indigenous people?
Well, it's technically, because it's under now, it's now under occupational authority. It's now under administration. Of course they are. Of course they are. It's 1912, I believe the date was. The Parliament of Great Britain changed to the Parliament of United Kingdom. One abandoned their position, another one stepped in. The Queen, and this is from Encyclopedia Britannica, right? I tried to find out what the job title was, and I was cited all sorts of shit excuses why nobody, the Attorney General, nobody else could answer that question. They refused to answer the simple question. What's the job title? And eventually I did get a job title from what used to be, he's gone now, the Minister for United Nations, European Union, Occupied Territories and Conflict Zones. Did you know we had a minister for that? Henry Bellingham, who was sacked not long after that. But he said she's Queen Elizabeth II of United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. However, all monarchs prior to Queen Elizabeth were Great Britain and Northern Ireland. United Kingdom wasn't there. United Kingdom with a small U and a small K is different from United Kingdom from a capital U and a capital K. Go back and read your Bill of Rights. More importantly, read the Treaty of Rights. Yeah. Try with the Scottish one now. It'll come to me in a minute. But if you go in there and read that, right, it's not United Kingdom with a capital U. It mixes it small U and capital U, small K and capital K, two different things. Right? Small U and small K just means it's like saying Big Bloke John. But if you put capital B in there, it's Big Bloke. It becomes his name, Big Bloke John. You put capitals in there, right? If it's small K, it just means a big bloke. But his name's John. So you change it to a job title and people miss these little tricks. Wigan Council, they, in the Metropolitan Names Order, it says can be called Wigan Council with a small c. But Wigan Council and Wigan called themselves Wigan Council, give themselves a corporate title with a capital C. I challenged them on it and they still don't understand this. They're so thick, they still don't understand this, right? But Wigan Council with a small c, what is that? That's nothing. It doesn't change the name of the existing council. But they went and thought of the thing because they don't. Yeah. So anyway, so be aware of capital letters, right? So the Queen in 1953 was the first ever monarch of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Okay. Have a think about that one. Yeah, challenge them on it. They got away with it because nobody's challenging them. I do.
It's like when in correspondence, they tend to put capital letters, small letters, uppercase.
Do you ask them why?
I mean, it's like, it's mind-boggling because it does.
Yeah, but do you ask them why they're doing it? Yeah. Ask them why. Instead of guessing, write to them. Why have you put a small c there? Why is there not a capital C? Why have you used the capital C there? That's why they hate me, because I ask questions.
Just pay reference to when you have to go to court or anything.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, these are letters that Mr. Mike Dolan. He's not got Mike.
Right, I have to be careful what I say in front of the camera, right?
No,
you listen to my stuff in the councils, right? You will stop it dead, right? Because at the moment you're not asking the right questions, right? When you understand my stuff in councils, right?
Yeah.
Not only am I stopping them, I'm about to demolish a council with this.
To him, if they consider
When you say they, who's they? Who's they? Who's they?
That's what I said.
Stop. That's where I stop. That's the point I stop. I don't go any further. They, who's they? Who are you? What's your title?
So I'm saying now,
Prove it.
Some company,
Yeah.
some company who thinks that they know he's
Right.
paid for some.
Okay. Right.
And then they get his name wrong.
That's as far as I go. That's as far as I go. I won't go any further than that. I'll keep 4 or 5 years now.
Just ignore it.
No. Talk about slavery later on, but that you just keep saying because you have an obligation, right? The UK Convention. I don't know where you go down this route. I'm getting dragged in. UK Convention on Criminal Corruption creates a duty of care upon the natural person. I don't give a shit if you think you're a man or a woman. I'll play natural person. It suits me, right? And the natural person for the activities of the legal person, right? And it cites for power of attorney. So if you're acting power of attorney, you're a power of representation. If you're directing activities, blah, 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 you have criminal liability for it, right? So now you, and the three things, the three criminal corruptions that they have in there, fraud isn't one of them, by the way. Stop using fraud, is money laundering, trade and influence, and money laundering, trade and influence, and bribery. You can't prove bribery, you haven't got enough resources. Can't prove trade and influence, haven't got enough resources. You can, however, money laundering, that's also anti-terrorism. So you have a real high duty of care to make sure not one penny of money you pay to anybody ends up in either a criminal organisation or an anti-terror in ISIS's hands or Al-Qaeda or IRA or whatever, right? You now have to ask them, I want accounting for every effing penny. You're getting nothing until I check, because I've got criminal obligation to make sure that's right. They will bluff you because they are fiddling, they are stealing, there's crime involved. Okay, you can sit there in the kitchen with your mates in the pub and whinge and whine, or do something about it. That's another talk I do, okay? I need to go back to this. Most important book ever written, Hubert Grotius, Rights of War and Peace, 1625, right? Most important book ever written. Read that, and what Hugo did, he went back into the past and looked at all the authorities. When you go to court, what you're doing is you're bringing authorities, a clash of authorities, right? So you're going to bring your authorities against the authorities of the other side. That's what a court is. It's war. It's two armies. I've got a bigger gang than you've got. That's literally what it is. So when you read Hugo Grotius, he brings in authorities from ancient Greece, from, you name it, from all history before him, right? He spent his lifetime in this. He suffered for doing this. The big guys didn't want him writing this book. But he then brought in all these great philosophers and the Roman law and all these different, Norman law, loads of different things, right, to justify him saying what he was saying and making these rights of war and peace. Some people call it the law of war and peace, right? Under war, there is no law, it's rights. They brought in the Human Rights Act in 1998. Did you know that human rights were designed for occupied territories? Right? They were designed for inhabitants, to protect inhabitants of occupied territories from the occupier and to create a duty of care upon the occupier. Right? 1998 that happened. Okay? I'm bringing stuff to the table here, guys. You've got to understand what's happened. We have been occupied. We were occupied by the United Nations in 1998 and the European Union as well. We've gone deeper. 1998. But human rights is not there to protect us in a civilian, peaceful society. It's there to protect us and create a duty of care upon the occupying power. Check that for yourself. Okay, it's fact. Brussels Declaration. Sorry? It's a right. Rights come from war. Yes. Yeah. We haven't got any human rights. They've got a duty of care. What the Human Rights Act does, it didn't give us any rights. Right? We already had freedoms. We don't need their blood. Yeah. But what the rights did was create an obligation, a duty of care upon them. So when you're claiming your human rights, what you're not doing is saying, I've got this. You get these muppets starting inventing shit as well, right? I've got the right to fucking, fuck off. You get the right to fucking punch in the gob. Yeah, well, if you got to go human rights, yeah, but however, they've got an obligation, a duty under international law. I'm not saying use this because I agree with it. I think human rights is a fucking an abomination compared to freedom. Did you know the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was actually called Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms? Did you know the European Convention of Human Rights? You see it, EHCR. They don't say EHCR-FF. It's actually called 1956. It's actually called 1950, the European Convention of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. Now, when I step forward as an advocate of fundamental freedoms, it's because I know what it is. Fundamental freedoms is something we have. They want us accepting the rights of the occupying power. Of Go fuck yourself. I'm sovereign. A sovereign has freedoms. The occupying power gives the occupied people rights. You're claiming jurisdiction, but which one you want to go through? Which one you want to stand under? Do you want to stand under human rights? Great, you're now an occupied person. If you want to stand under fundamental freedoms and not recognise human rights, fine, you're now acting as a sovereign. Right, and this is the route we're going down now, but I'm jumping ahead here. So these are the documents at a minimum you need to know. But if you get your head around these, trust me, you'll be able to stand up on stage and just talk to other people. It's not difficult. This is easier than common law. All these people have studied common law and contract law. This is so blindingly easy. And by the way, when you get to this level, all the niceties of legal debates and barristers verbosely arguing, the background to cases and case logs out the window. This is 5-year-old in a playground. It's mine. No, it's not. I've got a big brother. He's going to come in and kick your ass. Well, I'm going to get my big brother. Well, we're going to go to daddy. We're going to go to the teacher. And we're going to get teacher to come and sort this out. This is what all this crap is. Right. Anyway, so if you actually read international case law, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. Anyway, I'll do this myself. Application of Human Rights. So it's I.L. Benveniste, International Law of Occupation, 2nd edition book. I would highly recommend everybody gets. If you're not reading this stuff, you're on the internet reading shit, right? You need to really, 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 really get your head around this. The application of human rights law to occupations is on one level beneficial to holding the occupant to account for an enlarged scope of duties towards the occupied population. So that creates a duty upon the occupying power. Oh, I like that word, duty. I like obligations and duties on them. It doesn't create fuck all on us. At the same time, however, the treatment of the occupant as exercising some of the public powers normally to be exercised by the sovereign government runs the risk of normalising what is inherently a temporary, exceptional regime that should remain inherently suspect due to its foreignness. This is one of the top guys in the world, humanitarian law, is a professor, right? He's actually going to be in Oxford, moving to Oxford next year. I'll let you meet the guy, right? I'll repeat that, this is important. At the same time, however, the treatment of the occupant as exercising some of the public powers normally to be exercised by a sovereign government. I'll underline that word public, by the way. Private powers are a different thing, where you need to be going. Runs a risk of normalising what is inherently a temporary exceptional regime that should be inherently suspect due to its foreignness. How many temporary exceptional regimes have we had in the last 40 years in this country? A lot of them. It's all been normalised. It's perfectly normal. But we're the council. No, you're not. You're not the council. The council is them. Who are you? Oh, no, we're so what they are is an occupational regime. They've come in there, de facto occupation. They've stripped out the old Wigan Borough Council. It's now a shell company up front, right? Another outfit stepped in from behind the scenes. We would only want political power and a lot of money, and they want to take control of a vast area, because if you run the planning for an area, it's a license to print money, right? You and your corporate friends, your gangster friends, ask your people in Ukraine about that. City regions. That's their word. They banned vaping because apparently it's normalising smoking. Yes, exactly.
We're unprogrammed and normalising things when you're programmed.
Yeah.
And you go with it.
Okay. Yep. So I'm glad it's got people thinking. You go in and read this stuff. You see. I can only just cover it. You'll read this and you'll go, I promise you, when you start reading this stuff, you'll go, Eureka. Now I understand. That's why they did that and not that. That's why that case went that way. That's why the judge said that. Do you know what a judge said to one of our guys 5 years ago in court, outside the court afterwards? He spoke to the judge, and the judge said to him these words, yeah, but we're unoccupied people, which is why I've called this.
They don't like normal people.
They know this. They know this.
Like normal people. They like to be programmed.
Yeah, so that's good. The new people aren't programmed. You're here, you're not programmed. The people out there are. This is how we can talk to the people out there with reasonable stuff instead of freeman stuff. Right, conflict of interest. The law that regulates the administration of occupied territory. That word law becomes very interesting. What becomes the law? You've now got two powers, right? One's the law. What's the other one? The law that regulates the administration of occupied territories. We've now got administrative courts, haven't we? You go into a magistrate's court or a county court, it's administrative court. Greater Manchester is administrative county, right? And I've got a book from 1964. No, that's blatantly saying it's been occupied.
Does anybody actually believe in courts and
No, I have no confidence in them at all. And I've got to say, the judges at the top, right? I don't care if they're the nicest guys in the world, how straight they are, right? The conduct of the twats at the bottom has destroyed any confidence, because the guys at the top are even slightly honest and decent, they'd stop that happening, because that's destroying the confidence of the whole judiciary. And I did say earlier on there in the Ministry of Justice report 3.5 years ago, they actually said the functionality of the Ministry of Justice relies upon the confidence of the public. Where there's no confidence of the public, the judiciary ceases to exist. That's what they said. Remind them of that, by the way, in your letters. Quick one letter. I've lost, because they don't happen in this court today, I've lost confidence in the judiciary. I'll make sure all my mates do it as well. That's how you frighten them. The law that regulates the administration of occupied territories must confront inherent conflict of interest that exists between occupant and occupied. Who do you think you are? The occupation administration must attend to at least 3 sets of interests. Right, that's where again, this is what their job is as administration, occupation administration. First of all, its own security interests. Don't we see that a lot? Yeah. Cameras everywhere, coppers running around with snooping into their emails. Now they will, because they can't justify it, because the real threat that's out there, they've got to invent new shit and exaggerate it beyond all proportions. Climate change, polar bears hanging on for dear life off of blocks of ice and shit. Now, I'm not saying that humans aren't sort of in some respect changing the environment. Well, it takes one volcanic explosion to nullify any argument of that one. However, they need to do this to claim emergency powers. There's now an emergency, right? They need to claim some little brown fella or some nutter, with a gun or whatever, killing people or setting bombs off. Or there was one in London where some guy blew up some square that was a gay parade or something, But they've got to do this, because what they can do is saying, we need to protect you because our first interest is security interests, right? So that's what they've got to do. They've got to invent stuff. And what they'll do is they've stuff sitting there waiting. So if it happens, they've already got it planned. Waiting for something to happen. Remember the riots, the non-riots 5 years ago? The non-riots. Non-riots, yeah. But they had to make it riots. Oh my God, these children are running in mayhem. Guy down in London, goopy shopkeeper down, smacked him in the back of the bloody head and ended it. Anyway, the police had to invent more powers. The word riot means you get insured. That's all the word riot means. If you call the Riot Act, it means that the people whose property gets damaged get insured by the government. They don't have to do their private insurance. That's the difference, right? Okay, that's why the word riot. They called it a riot. It wasn't because it was a riot, because it was to do with insurance. Who insured it? Anyway, they insured it because the cops hadn't done their job. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, Northern Ireland's a clack. If you go in, I served Northern Ireland 2 tours, Northern Ireland. But if you go to Northern Ireland, you start to understand the stuff a lot better, because it has been occupied under occupation for emergency powers for some time. Anyway, blah 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 blah. I was going to say, MI5 website, go on there, look up states of alert, and there's 5 states of alert, right? Same as the army has 5 states of alert, right? Bikini states, they call it in the army, used to, don't recall it now, but then it's called national alert state, and there's 5 states of alert, right? Turn on the table if anyone can find me a state of non-alert. There's no state of non-alert, so they've created a permanent state of emergency. And I noticed last night in the weather, my God, yellow alert, rain warning from Merseyside. The fuck you talking? It's going to be a bit of rain. I come from Scotland. What are you talking about with rain? But now they've had to make it in yellow alert. People go, oh my God, and they'll run for cover. It's a yellow alert. This is all invented bullshit, because they've got to justify giving themselves emergency powers. Once they've got emergency powers, they can do what they want, literally what they want, right? Council constitution. I love council constitutions. I read them. You've got to read your council constitution. You've got to know it, and you've got to read it. Yeah, you have so much fun with it. But the chief executive officer, as of, I believe it was February 2013, chief executive officer of Wigan Council, wherever they are, has got emergency powers. So there's a cell section called the chief executive officer and emergency powers. Interesting thing is, it doesn't actually tell you what the limits of it are. And you're not obliged to tell you that, because it's so private. It's under security, national security. And also, she wants to tell the mayor, and I believe it's the borough solicitor, the business manager, she wants to tell two people, if she invokes emergency powers, for example, forcing a judge to find against me in a court. Hint. She doesn't have to tell anyone except the mayor, and I think it was a borough solicitor, if I remember rightly. She doesn't even have to tell the councillors. She can change the planning laws for that council, not have to tell anyone. Now, if you're a criminal, would you not have a fucking field day with that? And I don't swear a lot, but would you not have a fucking field day with that? Criminals, if they're sitting, if criminal gangs, right, these scamsters and crooks and villains and bankers are not sitting there going, yeehaw at this, right, I'll be surprised, because I would be. How much would it cost to get control of Greater Manchester Combined Authority with a small group of people in charge of it, non-elected, so they're all appointees, none of them subject to proper democracy? How much would it cost me to get total control of 12 people to do what I want them to do? How much do you think it will cost? Throw some numbers at me. 10 million pounds, 50 million pounds. I'll send down some heavies with guns, I'll torture them, I'll get some shit on them, I'll find the pictures of them kiddie fiddling, I'll find out about the dodgy fraud deals in the past, how much money they stole when they were working for the councils. Yeah. Right? You now, for that small amount of money, can take control of the whole of Greater Manchester, and that's my concerns about these city regions, is because they're wide open to criminal takeover. Occupation by criminal gangs. Doesn't have to be de jure law, it can be de facto. They've just fucking done it. I can't comment on individuals yet, but yeah.
£200,000 this manager of the town centre decided to resign. That's why we re-investigated. And then suddenly he's in charge of the council.
Yep. It's amazing how people screw up and then get promoted in it. Yeah. Yeah. Ukraine, one of the main reasons, I've got a few Ukrainian friends, and they were telling me the reason for their first revolution, those three revolutions, revolution theory, and the revolution does what it says in the tin, takes you back to where at the beginning, just with different people in charge, occupation, different occupational power. And then Ukraine, the country had broken up into little city regions, and each city region was run by its own little private criminal family with its own private police. Remember in that square, we couldn't tell who were the real police, even in the talk we were talking about, who were the real police and who were the hired gang thugs working for the town council, the city council, right? This is the situation we're at, right? That's the region under occupation, right? But anyway, so this subject goes a lot further than me. What's going on next door? Somebody just stabbed her. Role of the occupant. This is the occupying power, right? The occupant is expected to fill the temporary vacuum created by the ousting of the local government and maintain its base of power until the conditions for the latter's return are mutually agreed on. So that's what the role is, right? This is for everything, right? Now, you got a letter. This is where we're going to get interesting for you, right? Hopefully it has been interesting. You got a letter addressed to the occupier, right? Anyone get any thoughts now what that means? You're never going to look at it again, though, are you? Right, you're never going to look at that letter twice again, are you? So you're never going to just dismiss that in future. You're going to stop at that word occupier. No. Never saw anything about yours reply to stuff, eh? It means there's either war or peace there. If it was two states, there's war or peace. So if you're the occupier, is that a state of war or a state of peace? So if you're the occupier, you could be, there's a thing called, as we'll cover us. You see, I give you the, yeah. Right, yeah, understand. You're going so deep, you've now dropped yourself in the shit, go to jail, do not pass go, bye-bye, right? You've gone past those two words, the occupier. What I do is I write back and say, I'm referring to the Joint Services Manual 2004, the military definition of occupier is who are you addressing? And things go away, they don't write back again. Okay? It's that simple. Why go past that? You're now inventing stuff to be offended about. I don't know who they're addressing it to. Who are they addressing it to? Which is why I'm doing this talk. You deal with it your own way. You deal with it your own way, yeah? But I'll say to them, I am a conscientious objector. I do not engage in war. I do because I've been there. I do not engage in war. I've no interest in financing war. I've nothing to do with obnoxious conduct. I've anything to do with war. I'm a conscientious objector. How dare you refer me to an occupier? I'm not occupying this. But what they're doing is they have cleverly engineered a little trick where you're occupying as either a service provider to the occupying military power, or you are a military contractor to the occupying power, right? Now, Bury is under capita, the areas I know about. St Anne's is under, Field and Weir, sorry, is under capita. Peterborough is under Serco. These are military contractors, guys. These are all military contractors. G4S, military contractor. Ask the people at Iraq about G4S. These are all military contractors. Funny how all these military contractors are in these massive contracts. In Australia, all the prisons now, as far as I'm aware, all the prisons now are run by one company, Serco. And what I'm hearing from research over there is that most, if not all, of the legal practices now are owned or are managed or heavily influenced by Serco. I was dealing with a bailiff company called Phillips, I was a DVLA. DVLA loved me again, but I was dealing with DVLA, and this bailiff company called Phillips, fully threats and blah blah blah. Right? I started digging in. I found that Phillips had been bought over the week before by a company called Serco. They're a bailiff practice, and I started checking in the legal practices working with them also owned or shares. Shares. Is that booting us out? Anyway, so be aware, look for military contractors everywhere. Look for them. Is this bringing you stuff to you guys? Yes, it's joining doors and giving you stuff. This room should be fucking full of people learning this, you know. This is pissing me off. I get the most humble thanks, gratitude for few people being here. It's because I don't talk shit. I'm bringing stuff to the table. Right? Solid. That's why I sat. So anyway, I mean, there's other people watching live there. So anyway, I'll stop. I'll give it 5 minutes. We'll stop. Yeah, and you can carry on doing this research, right? But this stuff is easy. Occupier is right. You need. I mean, the right to use an occupier. How many people have taken the time to actually look up an occupier? Never. That's the stuff I do. I don't follow people on the net. People on Skype. Yes. Can't talk about the camera. Can't talk about the camera. Great Britain, East Indian company and all that. It made Britain great. It made fucking founders great. Yeah. South Africa, Boer War. The British went actually at war with the Boers. South African company was one of the companies. I forget the name of it. I forget actually the name of the company now. But they invited the British sovereign power in to help defend their interests. Right? We went actually at war with the Boers. This is the interesting thing. So I'll just focus now, right, on sovereign and occupier. Right? There's a duality. And everywhere you look, you'll see two of everything, right? When you look carefully enough, right? There's a sovereign queen. Did you know there's a king and a queen? Do you know we've still got a king and a queen? Okay. We've got it from inside. There's a king's bench and a queen's bench. Yeah, there's kings, right? Okay. There's also the treasury and the exchequer. One's king, one's queen. Right? But anyway, I don't, but that's just one aspect of it, right? The HMCS, Her Majesty's Court Service, rebadged to HMCTS and was created under private partnership. 3 parties created a private partnership, and the bastard child of that was HMCTS, because it's the framework document. I've got a copy of it, the partnership document, right? They won't ask any more questions because it's private. So what happens is the occupying power that comes in, it can't, as I explained earlier, can't oust the existing sovereign power out.
It can't take power from it by force, right? All it can do is manage and control on its behalf, right? So what they do is and I.L. Ben-Vrist in his book covers this and explains it. He shows you examples of recently, this is what they do now. They don't use military power, they're far more clever. They come in and they mirror the existing elements of the regime, right? So what happens is, I would postulate that HMCS became HMCTS. No, it doesn't. HMCS still exists. I've still seen papers. I'm still seeing documents today with HMCS on it. There's also HMCTS. Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs became HMRC. Sound the same, smell the same, taste the same, talk the same, check if the dresses are the same. Now, we found one of the ladies down, going back a couple of years now, when, you know, just to give somebody else's information in here now, she'd done a check down in one of the courts down in Maidstone and found that the court had 4 postcodes for one court building and 4 postcodes, right? Different companies all doing similar things. Courts, look at the courts themselves. They're under Maritime Port Authority. They are what's called charter parties. But again, we're going a bit deep here, but you need to look into that yourselves. But look at all the other, anything else, you'll find it used to have a name, but it's changed its name. What hasn't changed its name in the last 20 years? Right? Now, the existing one I'm telling you now still exists, right? Or maybe abandoned. It might be just a paper exercise now at Wigan Borough Council. Maybe just an abandoned shell now. No, the assets have been stripped and one thing or another, but it's still there. So it's still the sovereign power. So I would suggest that when you're writing to, for example, your local authority, it's the same paperwork, but it's who you write it to. Are you going to write to the town clerk or the chief executive officer? Which one's sovereign and which one's occupier? Right? Are you going to write to the borough surveyor or head of planning, head planning officer? What's the word officer? What does that remind you of? Military. All companies have to register under Companies House, yeah? And as a result, they all become officers. We used to have directors in this company one time, in this country. Now it's officers, right? What's happened to every company in Britain? They've all come under occupational control. So, as I say, I found 2 land registries. There's a UK land registry and a Great Britain land registry. One's got the PO box number, which is meaningless. Another one's got a physical address down in Lincoln's Inn Field with 2 names of guys you can write to as well. Very helpful indeed. So I'm sure it's the same paperwork. It depends what authority you send the paper to, is what authority you're surrendering to. So would you prefer to be part of the occupying administration? It's a genuine question to think about. Don't just say automatically, go, no. Think about it. For a situation by situation case, would you rather be part of the occupying administration, knowing how much obligations they have? Seriously, don't discount it, right? They have got so many obligations to you, including human rights and all that crap, right? If they're not protecting your security, blah, blah, there's 1,000 other things as well, right? They don't want to be there because it's very expensive. And they've got to maintain the welfare, the well-being, the health, economic welfare, all raft of things, right? Would you rather be, for a case-by-case example, working for the occupational regime, right? Or would you rather be working for the sovereign regime? Right? You decide for yourself what's best for you in a case-by-case example, because both give you advantages depending on how you want to play it. But just be aware there is that duality. They've got us. One, you can also say one's public, one's private. It's another way of looking at it. Then what they've done public, private. So it's difficult to tell what's public and private anymore, right? Because you get private contractors that can freeze guys in the public capacity. Yeah. So there's some background to you guys right now. The rest is just definitions. We're just going to give us a load of definitions. I won't bore you any more details. You've got enough there to start digging into this and look up International Law of Occupation. Get a copy of that book by Bailiffs, Ben-Vrist. I promise you, it's one of those books you'll go, how did we miss it? I.L. Ben-Vrist. E-Y-A-L. Ben-Vrist. It's called International Law of Occupation. Promise you, it's blinding. Anyway, that's good, guys, yeah? Cheers, mate. Hopefully you've used to it. Okay, so I'll stop the talk there, but anyway, that's the book. I would recommend you get that. I promise you'll be sitting there going, you'll be showing your mates. It's one of those books. So,
Hey Ben, I don't know. I'm not video. I'm not recording this one. Ask the man who's recording. Don't me. Is it good? It's on YouTube. This is it. Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, I did a talk 4 weeks ago in Ashton on this subject. Right. I did the full talk, and